Alright, right now, think of any Sonic game. You know what? Any game in general. When you think of that game, what is the first image that comes to your mind? I would say there's a pretty solid chance that you immediately thought of the game's box art, or cover art, or key art, or art. It makes sense. Video game box art is meant to represent the game you're about to play. And it also just looks nice in a collection of games. That is, when you can see the cover art, of course. But when it comes to Sonic box art, there has always been some inconsistency, let's just say. So let's look through some Sonic box art, because why the hell not? Now, I know I'm not the first person on this planet to talk about Sonic box art, so we're going to change things up a little bit. Instead of starting with the classic games and going in release order like a bitch, let's instead go in reverse release order, starting with Sonic X Shadow Generations. Okay, look, this art has grown on me over the last few months. Originally, I just thought everyone here looked kind of out of place. They're all standing on these floating platforms, and it's kind of an eyesore. The background is cool, as it pays homage to the original Generations box art, but instead we have the Shadow Doom world bleeding in from the top, you know, to represent the two halves of the game here. The same classic Sonic and modern Sonic renders from the original Generations are used here, with some reshading that does make them look better. But I'm a big fan of the fact that Shadow is front and center. Looking at the box art, you know that this is mainly Shadow's game, but everyone is still represented here, which is why I slightly prefer this art to the reverse cover art / JP box art. Alright, look, artistically, this looks way better, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it does a particularly great job at representing the game as a whole. We have the two halves here, and Sonic and Shadow are more equally represented, which does somewhat represent the game better in that case, but this box art doesn't scream Generations to me. It's very difficult to make out what's going on in the background, and there's no classic Sonic to be seen, which is a major part of the original Generations. This art could pretty much be used for any game that involves Sonic and Shadow, but in my opinion, it doesn't work as a representation of the collection Sonic X Shadow Generations. Again, it looks cool, but I think the US art is slightly better. Let's rewind a couple of years to Sonic Frontiers. This game also has two different regional box arts. Let's start with the US one. Yep, this is the most confident I have seen Sonic in forever. It just looks so modern, so cool, so Sonic. But other than that, what the hell is going on here? Sonic is grinding on a rail, which, yeah, you are doing that a lot in the game, so I'll give you that. But, what about the open zone? You know, the main selling point of Sonic Frontiers. We have a blurry background of Kronos Island, which doesn't even look that open from this viewpoint. The render looks nice, but the rest of the art doesn't, which is why I mostly prefer the JP art. Here we go. The openness here is in full effect. Sonic is running towards an open Kronos Island, and Sonic isn't the main focal point here. You're supposed to mainly focus on the world itself, which is way more effective in my opinion. I think a good comparison for the differences in the Frontiers box art is the Breath of the Wild box art. In the US, we got this art of Link looking over Hyrule. It's very adventurous, puts the viewer in Link's shoes. And then the Europe box art is just like, oh, yep, that's Link alright. The JP art for Frontiers has the same effect as the US art for Breath of the Wild. And the US art for Frontiers has the same effect as the European art for Breath of the Wild. I mean, when you look at this, what else are you supposed to think besides, oh, yep, that's Sonic alright? It doesn't represent how different Frontiers is compared to other Sonic games. Let's move on to Sonic Colors Ultimate. Okay, this one is a little interesting. I like the original box art for Sonic Colors. You had Sonic front and center with the Wisps, which are the main gimmick of the game. Okay, that's cool. You also had Tropical Resort in the background, so that adds some depth and contrast. And then you also see Earth in the distance, so you know that this is a space adventure. Overall, pretty solid box art. But Colors Ultimate just slaps the renders on a colorful background. Yeah, the color is here, everything stands out nicely, but this doesn't do a good job at representing what the game is about. It seemed that they tried to take a page out of Mania's book and incorporate this wacky, colorful, cool background, which Mania's box art did quite well. But the difference here is that I feel like the environments and colors are the best things about the game, so I hate how they just took that out of this box art. Other than that, it's simple and modern, which is a pretty popular trend in the video game box art scene nowadays, but I still don't like it. Alright, Sonic Unleashed. Yeah, not a fan. Okay, let's give credit where credit is due. We have daytime and nighttime represented here, with a divide between regular Sonic and the Werehog. Okay, great. The main gimmick is represented here, but that's only half of what Unleashed is about. What about the different places we travel to throughout the game? We have the Earth being shattered near the bottom, which is cool, but it's hardly noticeable at a glance. But then we have the Sonic Unleashed JP box art, or I mean the Sonic World Adventure box art. Instead of having the day and night stuff represented, we have the different countries you explore throughout the game, and I think this is much better. It's clear to me that in the East, they wanted to focus more on the worlds of Unleashed, and in the West, they opted to push the day and night mechanic instead. This is even represented in the different titles of the game. Sonic World Adventure, yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Sonic Unleashed, that kinda tells you that Sonic unleashes some sort of new power when the sun goes down. Each regional box art is representing a different aspect of the game, and I think that is awesome. But when it comes to Unleashed, I think it's more important to represent the worlds you travel, which is why I prefer the JP art. The Storybook games have some pretty cool box art, especially Black Knight. Dude, this looks like a movie poster or something. We have this badass render of Sonic holding Caliburn with a dark, mysterious castle background, with King Arthur looming over in the distance. This is perfection. Except for this little eyesore down here. Starting with Black Knight and ending with Black Knight, they added this Sonic Storybook series label to the bottom right of the box art. It's just a little page flap showing a Sonic still from one of the cutscenes. It's cute. But this was the only time they did it, because after this, the Storybook series was cancelled. I mean, they could have at least reissued Secret Rings with this label, because looking at this, knowing that this is the only game to be officially labeled as a Storybook series game on the box art is fucking depressing. Secret Rings has some pretty badass art as well. I like how the flame extends to the top of the art, and the doorway behind Sonic invokes a sense of mystery. It's great. Japan also got some different cover art variants for these games, and unfortunately, they have Colors Ultimate Syndrome. The backgrounds look cool and all, but the art is just very generic as a whole. I do appreciate the consistency in Sonic's posing here, and that was eventually carried over to Frontiers, so that's cool, I guess. But regardless, I prefer the US box art for both games. Sonic 06 and Shadow the Hedgehog had pretty similar box arts, all things considered, which makes sense. Both of these games have simple titles, and each of them has the main character front and center, with nothing else really going on. In 06's case, it's Sonic running through Kingdom Valley towards the viewer, really emphasizing the speed that he reaches in the game once or twice. And in Shadow's case, terrorism. But there's not much else to say here. You can look at this art and say, oh, yep, that's a game about Shadow, and you can look at this art and say, oh, yep, that's a game about Sonic, and Shadow, and Silver, and Elise, and time travel, and Sonic Rush has some pretty dope box art. It's so stylish and cool. You have Sonic and Blaze striking cool poses with this wacky, colorful background. This box art tells you everything you need to know about the game. It's just awesome. Rush Adventure also has some pretty solid art. I do think Blaze is a little misrepresented here, but it does get the point of the game across. You have the island, the water, and the ship, so yeah, you can tell that this is a game about traveling from island to island on a boat. I'm not going to worry about talking about the advanced games too much because it's pretty much the same deal as Rush, just way less cool, but Sonic Battles box art looks really nice. I'm just not 100% sold on the poses here. The art style is awesome though. Okay. It's finally time to talk about the adventure games, starting with Sonic Adventure DX. What the f happened here? The original Sonic Adventure box art is nice. It has Sonic striking a cool pose in the words Sonic and Adventure. And yeah, that's about it. No, it doesn't necessarily do a great job of representing anything that goes on in the game. You don't see any of the other playable characters, villains, worlds, or anything. But considering what this game was trying to be, I think this box art matches the vibe they were going for. But Adventure DX's box art just looks awful. They replaced the 2D art with 3D renders of Sonic and Chaos that don't look that great in my opinion, and slapped them on a similar looking background but with this red stripe. Like, what was going on here? It looks like a jumbled mess. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle gets the point across way better. Okay, we have all of the characters represented here with the Chao and a clear divide between the heroes and the villains, which is the main thing going on in the game. Awesome. The Dreamcast art for Sonic Adventure 2 pretty much did the same thing, but instead Sonic and Shadow are doing those iconic poses that just can't be topped. But thankfully, SA2 Battles art doesn't attempt to just completely shit all over the original vision like SADX did. Before moving on to the classic games, I wanted to take a quick look at the art for Sonic 3D Blast. Now, this one has some differences depending on which console version of the game you have. For Saturn, okay, it looks alright, I guess. We have Sonic jumping, and honestly, the render here doesn't look that great, but it does look very 90s, I guess, so I'll give it that. And then we have the Genesis variant. Oh Jesus, what the hell, man? Sonic just looks very lifeless here. It's honestly kind of terrifying. But then we have the regional box art differences. The Saturn box art in Japan has this 2D artwork instead, which is an odd choice for a heavily marketed 3D game, and that's 3D in big quotes, but it looks cool. This is also a good time to point out that in other regions, the game is called Sonic 3D Flicky's Island instead of 3D Blast, because other regions knew this game was anything but a blast. But in both of the European box arts, we have this weird-ass model of Sonic's head on this red circle, and it's just like, what the hell am I even looking at? This looks hideous. The logo on the European art is also very strange looking. You have Sonic 3D in big, bold, fun text, but then in this small-ass unreadable font, you have the rest of the title. Like, what? Why? Why is it like that? Regional differences are a big trend going into the Genesis era of Sonic box art. Usually how it went was Japan had this cool, stylish art with a bunch of color and shapes and cool posing, while the US went for a more westernized, cartoony style to appeal more to Western audiences, and then Europe just did whatever the hell they felt like that day. These regional differences lasted pretty much throughout the entire Genesis era, with Japan mainly opting to use this cool, stylish 2D art, with the only notable exception being Sonic CD. This art is simply iconic, there's no denying that. But I would have loved to see something along the lines of the Japanese PC release's cover art, which has that same feel as the Japanese arts of the OG Sonic trilogy. Sonic and Knuckles' cover art is also f***ing fantastic. It's very simple, but it gets the point across very effectively. You have Sonic and Knuckles, and they're connected to represent the lock-on feature of the game. That's awesome. Okay, so after all of that, I think we can safely come to the conclusion that Sonic box art has been wildly inconsistent over the years. If you ask me, I think a good video game key art piece should strive to represent the game you're about to play, and surprisingly, only a handful of Sonic box arts do that effectively. But yeah, I just wanted to yap about Sonic art for a bit, so sorry for wasting your time. Feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts on some of this box art if you want, but that's all for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.